Welcome to The Explainer. Imagine, just for a second, waking up one morning with absolutely nothing. No wallet, no phone, no memories, literally not even a name. You have no idea about your age, who your family is, or where you belong. Today, we're unpacking the mind-bending true story of a man who experienced exactly this, a guy who became legally and practically invisible. We're going to piece together a mystery that totally baffled the FBI, top genealogists, and pretty much the entire internet for over a decade. Okay, let's dive into this. Seriously, how would you even prove you exist? Think about it. To get a job, you need a social security number. An apartment, you need a background check. Any kind of government help, you absolutely gotta have an ID. But what if your mind is a complete blank slate and you've got zero physical records on your person? Well, this wasn't just some crazy hypothetical thought experiment. This was a terrifying, real-life nightmare for one man starting in the summer of 2004. The whole thing kicks off on August 31st, 2004, right around 5 a.m. in Richmond Hill, Georgia. A Burger King employee goes out to the dumpsters and stumbles onto a really visceral, horrific scene. There's a man lying there, completely unconscious, totally naked, and just severely sunburned. The guy actually has 3 distinct depressions in his skull from blunt force trauma, and he's covered in red ant bites. Now, you'd think this would immediately trigger some massive statewide police manhunt, right? Well, shockingly, no. Local law enforcement treated this purely as a medical issue, not a crime. The scene wasn't preserved, and they didn't even open a criminal investigation for years. So he gets rushed to the hospital, and when he finally wakes up, he is completely stripped of his identity. He basically became a living doe. In fact, hospital staff literally jotted down his placeholder name as Burger King Doe or BK Doe. And to make things even worse, he was suffering from these untreated cataracts in both eyes that left him practically blind. It wasn't until months later, after a charity stepped in to pay for corrective surgery, that he could actually see his own face in a mirror. And man, he was shocked to realize he looked, about 20 years older than he felt. He was a man completely invisible to a societal system that, let's face it, is built to process data and numbers, not actual human beings. Section 1. The Invisible Man. So, operating under the placeholder name Benjamin Kyle, actually a surname he picked to match those hospital initials BK, and specifically spelling Benjamin with 2 A's. He found himself trapped in this profound bureaucratic absurdity. And this brilliantly illustrates the nightmare of the system he was navigating. Because he couldn't remember his social security number, he couldn't legally get hired, couldn't rent a home, couldn't get traditional public assistance. The government offered absolutely zero help for an American citizen with amnesia. I mean, the IRS literally told him his best bet was to falsely claim he was an illegal alien just to get a taxpayer ID. Can you believe that? He spent years bouncing between men's shelters and hospitals, doing yard work for cash, just totally locked out of society.
Section 2. Searching for a past.
Now, doctors diagnosed him with dissociative amnesia. His brain had basically walled off his entire personal narrative, but it strangely managed to hold on to these highly specific, completely scattered breadcrumbs about the world. Now, what's really interesting about this slide is how the human brain processes that kind of memory. Like, he couldn't tell you his own mother's name, but he was absolutely certain he was born exactly 10 years before Michael Jackson. Same exact birthday. He had these vivid memories of Indianapolis as a kid, too. Seeing movies at the Cinerama, eating 25-cent grilled cheese sandwiches at the Indiana State Fair. He even clearly remembered the layout of the University of Colorado Boulder Library and these specific public debates over Denver transit funding. All these disjointed facts firmly placed him in Indiana and Colorado sometime between the 1950s and the early 80s. But as you can probably guess, knowing what a guy ate at a state fair in the 60s doesn't magically give you his name. The investigation was just a grueling series of dead ends. They ran his fingerprints through the FBI and military databases. Nothing. He even went on national TV on the Dr. Phil show, where a professional hypnotist helped him recall a partial social security number, but it led absolutely nowhere. Facial recognition, 0 matches. By 2012, there was even this massive online petition to the White House begging lawmakers to just give the guy a new social security number, but it expired without enough signatures. The system had just entirely failed him. Section 3. The DNA Breakthrough. Okay, let's jump forward to 2015. Over a decade had passed since he woke up behind that dumpster. Bureaucracy couldn't solve this. Media exposure couldn't solve it. The real breakthrough came from what was then a pretty new frontier: genetic genealogy. This renowned genetic detective, Cece Moore, and her team, they took on Benjamin's case. And the beauty of it was, they didn't need government files. They just needed his DNA.
By comparing his test results to databases full of people who voluntarily shared their genetic profiles, they started tracing his ancestral bloodline. And finally, after 11 long, frustrating years of dead ends, they used an exhaustive process of elimination and found a DNA match with relatives from the Western Carolinas. They cracked the impossible case.
Section 4. William Burgess Powell.
Which brings us to the moment everyone was waiting for. On September 16, 2015, the massive reveal went public. The mystery of the Invisible Man was finally solved. The guy calling himself Benjamin Kyle was, in reality, a man named William Burgess Powell. And check out the initials there. He naturally gravitated toward the B in Burgess when he chose the name Benjamin, and his brain somehow held on to that double A sound. But honestly, here's the most incredible part. When they pulled his hard factual birth records, they found his birthday was August 29, 1948. That totally random, scattered memory he had about sharing a birthday exactly 10 years before Michael Jackson, it was 100% accurate.
So the crucial point is understanding exactly who William Powell was before the amnesia hit. He was born in Lafayette, Indiana, and unfortunately, he survived a pretty traumatic, abusive childhood. But the most startling revelation was this. Back in 1976, way before he ever ended up in Georgia, he intentionally abandoned his car, left all his belongings behind, and completely cut ties with his family just to move to Colorado on a whim. He hadn't just gotten lost in 2004, he had intentionally walked away from his life decades earlier.
Section 5. The missing 20 years. Let's move to and see how this builds, because this identification actually introduces a massive, chilling twist that flips this whole mystery right on its head.
You might be thinking, great, they found his name, case closed, happy ending, right? Well, reporters started digging into his newly discovered past, and they found Social Security records showing William Powell working various jobs as a cook out in Colorado. But here is the kicker. Those records only go up until 1983, and then they completely, abruptly stop. He didn't just lose his memory in 2004, he had already vanished completely off the government's grid back in 1983. To really wrap your head around the scale of this chronological black hole, let's look at the timeline. He's born in 1948, abandons his family in 1976. The very last time his Social Security number is ever used is 1983. Then, just a massive void. Absolute silence until he's found beaten and stripped of his memory behind a Burger King in 2004. And then it takes until 2015 to even figure out his name. That gap between 1983 and 2004 is just stunning.
That is a gap of 20 years. 2 full decades. For 20 years, there are 0 tax records, no driver's license renewals, no property deeds, no arrests, nothing. He lived entirely as a ghost. And because that blunt force trauma wiped his memory, he himself has absolutely no idea what he was doing during that entire time. It's a pretty haunting conclusion, honestly. Sometimes, even when a mystery is technically solved by science and DNA, it just leaves behind even darker, more impenetrable questions. We're basically left staring at the ultimate mystery. Who was William Powell during those 2 ghost decades? Did he go by another name? How do you even survive off the grid in modern America for that long? And most chillingly, what really happened behind that Georgia dumpster? Who beats a man, strips him, and leaves him with brain damage so severe that it erases the mind of a guy who had already tried to erase himself? It's a story that absolutely challenges everything we think we know about identity, memory, and what it actually means to exist. Thank you so much for joining me on this explainer. I hope piecing this puzzle together left you as captivated as I am. Keep asking questions, and I'll catch you next time.